Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you today about my friend Burkett. Share another story with you about Burkett. Hi, I'm J.S. Moore, and and I did a couple of books on Burkett, but the last one that I put together was a collection of stories that came not only from Burkett, but they also came from other people after he passed away. But this is the book. It's called the Big Mac Book. This painting is done by Joe Kilday out of Greenville, Tennessee. And this book is about the finest criminal defense lawyer the state of Tennessee ever produced. His name was Burkett McInturf, and he grew up on a river bottom farm, and he worked hard his entire life. So we're going to join Mac throughout his childhood, his education, 2 foreign wars, and into his legal practice. Now, someone would argue with me and say that Ray Jenkins, the terror of Tellico Plains, was the finest criminal defense lawyer Tennessee ever produced. But Burkett was actually born in Tennessee, and Ray Jenkins actually was born in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. The interesting thing about those 2 men is they actually shared cases later on in life, and Burkett came to know him through his friendship with John R. Todd, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm going to read for you one of the first stories that we wrote together, and the first story is called Monkey Business, okay, by J.S. Moore and Burkett McInturf. I always start my stories out with a quote. "I would be presumptuous indeed to present myself against the distinguished gentleman to whom you have listened, if this were but a measuring of ability. But this is not a contest among persons. The humblest citizen in all the land, when clad in the armor of the righteous cause, is stronger than all the whole hosts of error that they can bring. I come to speak to you in defense of this cause, as holy as the cause of liberty, the cause of humanity. When this debate is concluded, a motion will be made to lay upon the table the resolution offered in commendation of the administration, and also the resolution in condemnation of the administration." So good and bad. "I shall object to bringing this question down to a level of persons." So he's using big words. He really needs to simplify it, but this is a well-respected man and well-spoken, person of the day. "The individual is but an atom. He is born, he acts, he dies, but principles are eternal, and this has been a contest of principle." That was William Jennings Bryan. All right. See this little picture here? Get it over here. Other way. So Burkett is the smallest boy. If there was another picture over here, he would actually be a lot taller, some of the other guys and the men. This is a basketball team he was on in 1929. Anyway, I asked him this question. When I asked Burkett McInturf if attending the Scopes monkey trial at such a young age inspired him to become a lawyer, he had this to say. After he gave it a few seconds of thought, he chuckled, and then he gave his honest reply. "Being that young, maybe 6 or 8 years old, the one thing that really impressed me was that big gorilla. I always remember seeing it. He was set up, dressed in a business suit, and sitting in a chair at the table where we were eating breakfast. He just sat there, a giant gorilla, a real gorilla, and he ignored us completely." Mac went on to explain his recollections about one of the most famous attorneys involved in the Scopes monkey trial. "Clarence Darrow had a son who wasn't no count at all, and he kept his daddy broke. When the Depression hit and all the banks busted, Clarence Darrow only had $300 in his account. He'd somehow lost everything. As much money as he made, see, he got $1 million on that California murder deal. Finally pleaded him guilty. Darrow got an awful lot of glory with the labor unions. They were all forming then, and he was a huge advocate for them. I've read everything that Clarence Darrow wrote. Well, at least 2 of them. He may have written 3 books total. And practicing law I'd already used and said, well, before I ever knew he'd said it." I might have lost you there. But what he's saying is he used every strategy that Darrow had pretty much before he ever knew Darrow had said it or used it. "And when I asked my daddy what reaction he had to being in Darrow's presence, my dad said, Son, when that man spoke, something came over his listeners and made them, convinced them to do whatever he said, believe his very words as if they came from God himself. For this reason, Burkett, Ed McInturf continued, Darrow was pretty bad after the women, too. And they adored that dangly, physically unattractive man. One of his 2 or 3 girlfriends hung on to him his whole life. Now, Jimmy McInturf, Burkett's son, practices law in Alabama. When I spoke with him the other day, he had fond memories of going with his dad to the Blumpville jail and helping to pass out cigarettes to the inmates and other goods like candy that they might enjoy while Burkett would have a visit with a client or 3. Burkett's kind of example would lead his own son to becoming an advocate himself, and now his own grandson, James Burkett McInturf, as well, whom just graduated law school in 2011. There's another picture there. And here's Burkett. Burkett says, if I was to become a lawyer, I was going to be honest and true to myself and others. It's the moral responsibility. Suggested listening here comes from Jackson Browne, and the song is Doctor My Eyes and Rock Me on the Water. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be back to tell another story. See you later. Have a good one. God bless you.